Throwaway, because my husband knows my main account. Not sure if I'm overreacting or if this is something I should be worried about. I, female, 34, have been with my husband Brad, male 36, for 8 years now, married for 6 of those. We met at this charity fundraiser for kids with cancer. He was so charming and attentive, like actually listened to what I was saying instead of just waiting for his turn to talk, you know? And I don't know, we just clicked. Anyway, that's not why I'm posting. So about 14 months ago, I was in a pretty bad car accident. We were coming back from visiting Brad's college roommate, and we got rear-ended pretty badly on the highway. Brad was driving and he still feels really guilty about it, even though it wasn't his fault at all. The other driver was texting and slammed into us going like 50 miles per hour when traffic had stopped. I ended up with some serious back injuries and whiplash. Had to do several months of physical therapy, which is kind of ironic because I'm actually a physical therapist myself, so I know exactly how my recovery has been going and what I'm capable of. Brad was super supportive at first. He took time off from his job to help me out, did all the cooking, cleaning, helped me shower when I couldn't do it myself. Basically everything you'd hope your partner would do when you're injured. But here's the thing. I've been medically cleared for almost 10 months now. Like, completely cleared. My doctor literally wrote, "Patient has made a full recovery and can resume all normal activities without restriction" on my chart. I've shown Brad this paperwork multiple times, and yet he won't touch me. Like, at all. No sex, barely any hugging, no cuddling in bed. Every time I try to initiate anything, he gets this worried look and says he's scared of hurting my back again. I've tried everything to reassure him. I've shown him my medical reports, demonstrated how I can move normally again, even had him talk to my doctor. Nothing works. I completely trust Brad, and I have no reason to think he's being dishonest with me. He's always been such a good husband, and I know he loves me. But I've noticed some weird things lately. He's been super protective of his phone. Like he'll be texting and then immediately flip it over when I walk in the room. He's been working late a lot more than usual, and he's been really vague about where he is sometimes. I'll text asking when he'll be home and he'll say soon, but then not show up for like 3 more hours. Oh, and we've been having this ongoing disagreement about kids too. I really want to start trying because, hello, biological clock is ticking here, but he keeps finding reasons to put it off. First it was, let's get more financially stable. Then it was, let's wait until after your accident recovery. And now it's, I don't know what the excuse is anymore. Something happened last week that really got to me. I walked into the living room while Brad was on the phone, and I'm pretty sure he was talking to his friend Shane. As soon as he saw me, his whole tone changed, like mid-sentence. He was laughing about something, and then suddenly switched to talking about work stuff. When I asked who he was talking to, he just said it was work. When I mentioned I thought I heard Shane's name, he got all defensive and asked why I was monitoring his calls and if I didn't trust him. His face got all red. I backed down right away and said I was just curious. He apologized for snapping, but seemed really on edge the rest of the night. Later, when I asked about the call again, he claimed he didn't remember it. Here's another thing that's driving me crazy. He acts completely different around his friends. Last month, we had this cookout, and he was roughhousing with his buddies, doing these stupid football tackles for their fantasy league celebration or whatever. And then at this dinner party last week, his friend Kyle's wife, who's pregnant, was tired, and Brad carried her up the stairs to lie down. But he claims he can't hug me too hard because my back is too fragile. Make it make sense. I finally broke down and talked to my sister Nina about it last weekend. She thinks Brad might be using my injury as an excuse for something else. Either he's having an affair, or maybe he's just not in love with me anymore and doesn't know how to say it. I suggested couples therapy, and he shut that down immediately, said it was unnecessary, and made me feel like I was creating problems out of nothing. I don't know what to do. Am I being paranoid? Are these actual red flags? Part of me feels like I'm going crazy and imagining things because Brad has always been so good to me. But another part of me feels like something is seriously wrong, and I'm just not seeing it. I've been with this man for 8 years. I thought I knew him completely, but now I'm not so sure. Now for the first update. Hey everyone. First off, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who commented on my post last week. Reading through all your responses was honestly overwhelming in a good way. So many of you pointed out red flags that I think deep down I knew were there, but just couldn't bring myself to acknowledge. I kept going back and forth between thinking I was overreacting and feeling like something was seriously wrong. After thinking about it for a few days, I decided to trust my gut and dig deeper. I know that might sound sneaky, but I was just so tired of feeling crazy and second-guessing myself. So here's what happened. Brad has this monthly poker night with his buddies, Shane, Don, and Kyle, that's been going on since before we even got married. It's always at our house, and I usually use that time to visit my parents or friends. Like, it's been our thing forever. He gets his guy time, and I get to catch up with people. It's always been totally fine. Last Friday was poker night, and I don't know what came over me, but I just couldn't shake this feeling that something wasn't right. A bunch of commenters suggested hiring a PI, but honestly, we have joint accounts that Brad monitors closely, and there was no way I could explain a random $1,000+ charge. After looking up recording laws in our state, we're in a one-party consent state, by the way, I decided to buy this small recording device from Best Buy. I actually talked to my friend Trisha, who's a paralegal, first to make sure I wasn't doing anything illegal. She confirmed it was legal, but looked at me with these really sad eyes like she knew what I was going to find. That scared me even more. I told Brad I was going to Nina's house for the evening, which I actually did end up doing. Before I left, I set up the recorder in our home office, which is right next to the living room where they always play poker. I felt so gross doing this. Like, I've never been the type to snoop through phones or emails or anything. We've always had this mutual trust and respect for privacy, but at the same time, I just couldn't ignore all these weird things anymore. So many of you said I wasn't crazy for being suspicious, and that gave me the courage to actually do something. I barely slept at Nina's that night. I kept going back and forth between feeling like a paranoid psycho and being terrified of what I might find. The next morning, I waited until Brad left for the gym. He's gotten super into fitness lately and bought all this expensive workout gear while telling me we need to budget carefully for my supposed ongoing medical needs. Anyway, I went home and grabbed the recorder, then drove straight to the supermarket parking lot to listen. The first hour was exactly what you'd expect. Just a bunch of guys talking about sports and playing cards and giving each other shit. I almost gave up listening because I felt so stupid and invasive. But then I heard Brad mention my name. Shane asked Brad how the situation with Emma was going. And guys, Brad laughed. He fucking laughed and said the back injury excuse is still working perfectly. My hands started shaking so bad I dropped my phone. I had to rewind and listen again because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Kyle called Brad a genius for finding a way to check out without being the bad guy. And Brad was just bragging about how playing the concerned husband gets him sympathy from friends and family. I felt like I was going to throw up, but it got worse. Shane asked about that hot new account manager at Brad's office, and Brad started describing in detail his flirtations with someone named Heidi. The guys were joking about Brad's hall pass situation while I recover. I kept listening. I don't know why. I was just frozen, and heard Brad tell them how he's been bored with our marriage for years, but didn't want the financial hit of a divorce. Then he mentioned a separate bank account I knew nothing about. He called it his escape fund. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I just sat there in my car crying and hyperventilating. 8 years. 8 years with this man who I thought was the love of my life, who I thought was being supportive and caring. And the whole time he's been... I can't even type it without feeling sick. I drove straight to Nina's house, could barely form sentences. She thought someone had died based on the state I was in. When I finally managed to tell her what I heard, she didn't believe me at first. Then she got furious. Like, I've never seen my sister that angry. She wanted to drive to our house and confront Brad right then, but thankfully she helped me think it through instead. I spent the next week in planning mode. It's weird how calm I got once the initial shock wore off. I consulted with a divorce attorney. I gathered all the financial documents I could find. And guess what? I found evidence of that escape fund account Brad mentioned. Over $25,000 that he's been siphoning from our joint savings. Money that was supposed to be for our future. For the kids he keeps putting off having. After getting my ducks in a row, I decided to confront him. I waited until after dinner when he was relaxed on the couch. I calmly asked if he was happy in our marriage. He gave me this practiced response about us being solid despite the challenges we faced. God, looking back, I can see how rehearsed it all was. I mentioned I knew about his conversations with Shane and the others. He looked confused at first, then dismissive, like I was making things up. So I played a short clip from the recording. You guys should have seen his face. It went from shock to absolute rage in like 2 seconds. He immediately started yelling about how I was spying on him and violating his privacy. When I asked about the secret bank account, he tried to claim I was misinterpreting guy talk and locker room banter. When I said the word divorce, he completely switched tactics and started threatening me, said no one would believe me, and the recording was inadmissible. He stormed out saying I'd regret this. That was 2 weeks ago. He's been staying at Shane's place since then. He keeps going back and forth between sending threatening texts about how he'll destroy me in court and pathetic messages begging for another chance. It's like emotional whiplash. The worst part, he's already contacted his parents, Frank and Yvonne, and told them I had a mental breakdown and am making crazy accusations. They've always been so good to me, and now they probably think I've lost my mind. I've moved forward with divorce proceedings, but I'm terrified about what comes next. Brad has always handled our finances and has way more resources and connections than I do. He knows all our friends. He works in finance, and I'm just a physical therapist. His words, not mine. What do I do now? How do I protect myself? I feel so stupid for not seeing this sooner. Now for the second update. Hi everyone. So it's been about 3 months since my last post, and honestly, I've been putting off writing this update because it's been a total shitstorm in both good and bad ways. First, I just want to say thank you to everyone who commented on my previous posts. So, where to even start? After my last post where I confronted Brad about the recording and he stormed out, things got so much worse before they got better. Brad basically went on this insane smear campaign, telling literally everyone that I had some kind of mental breakdown. Like, he contacted my friends, his friends, who were also my friends, I guess, our neighbors, even my extended family members on Facebook. It was humiliating, and I was getting all these concerned texts from people I barely talked to, asking if I was okay and if I needed help. Oh, and the absolute worst part. He called my supervisor at the physical therapy clinic, suggesting I might be unfit to treat patients due to my emotional state and paranoid behavior. My boss, who thank God has known me for 6+ years, basically told him to fuck off, but in professional terms. But still, the fact that he tried to mess with my career, I was livid. I was really conflicted about what to do with the recording. I mean, I still felt kind of gross about making it in the first place, even though so many of you assured me I did nothing wrong. But Brad was telling everyone I was making things up, and I needed to defend myself somehow. One of the hardest decisions was what to do about Brad's parents, Frank and Yvonne. They've always been so good to me. I literally helped Yvonne through her physical therapy after her hip replacement 2 years ago. We got really close during those sessions. She would bring me these amazing homemade cookies and tell me embarrassing stories about Brad as a kid. I really loved them, and the thought of losing them too was breaking my heart. Brad had already gotten to them with his Emma's Gone Crazy story, but something wasn't adding up for them. I think partly because they had seen my recovery. They were at our house for dinner like a month before all this went down, and Yvonne noticed how well I was moving and how happy she was that I had fully recovered. I finally worked up the courage to text Frank and asked if they would meet me, just to talk. They agreed to meet at this quiet little cafe near their house. I got there super early and must have rehearsed what I was going to say like 50 times in my head. I felt like I was going to throw up. When they walked in, they looked so tired and worried. But then Yvonne immediately came over and hugged me, which I was not expecting. Frank asked me what was really going on, saying Brad's story didn't add up. I was like shaking trying to explain everything. I told them about how Brad had been using my injury as an excuse to avoid intimacy for months after I was fully healed, how he'd get all weird and overprotective whenever I tried to initiate anything, how he kept saying he was afraid of hurting my back even though doctors had cleared me completely. And then the weirdest thing happened. Frank and Yvonne exchanged this look, like they knew something. Frank sighed really deep and said this sounded familiar. I was so confused and asked what he meant. Yvonne told me that Brad had done something similar with his college girlfriend Melissa after she had an appendectomy. He used her recovery as an excuse to pull away from the relationship for months. Frank explained that Brad has this pattern of avoiding difficult conversations. He can't just say he's unhappy or wants to break up. He has to create these scenarios where he's actually the good guy for pulling away. I was sitting there in shock, like this was an actual pattern. How did I never know about this? I hesitated, but finally decided to play selected parts of the recording. When they heard Brad laughing about the back injury excuse working perfectly, Yvonne gasped and covered her mouth. Frank's face got really angry as it played. But when it got to the part where Brad mentioned his secret account, Frank suddenly reached over and stopped the recording. He looked devastated and angry at the same time. He told me Brad had borrowed $40,000 from them, claiming it was for my medical expenses from the accident. I nearly fell out of my chair. My insurance had covered almost everything. We had maybe $5,000 in out-of-pocket costs total. I had no idea about any loan from his parents. None. We all just sat there in silence for a minute. I think we were all processing how much Brad had been lying to everyone. They asked for some time to think about everything. I completely understood and told them I never wanted to put them in the middle of this. I actually started crying and said I was really going to miss them. Yvonne hugged me again and said they weren't making any decisions yet. About 2 weeks later, Frank called my attorney and offered to testify about Brad's pattern of deception and financial misconduct. I had such mixed feelings about this. Like, I was relieved that they believed me, but also felt terrible about coming between Brad and his parents. That was never my intention. I still send Yvonne birthday and holiday cards, by the way. We text sometimes too. It's a bit awkward, but I can't imagine just cutting her out of my life after everything. The divorce proceedings got ugly. Brad refused mediation. He demanded the house and like 70% of our assets, despite the fact that I now had proof he'd been hiding money. His lawyer was this aggressive jerk who kept trying to paint me as unstable and vindictive. The turning point came during a deposition when my attorney played portions of the recording for Brad's lawyer. You should have seen Brad's face. First, he tried to say it wasn't his voice, lol what. Then he claimed it was taken out of context. What context makes the back injury excuses working perfectly, okay? Then when my lawyer mentioned his parents were willing to testify, he completely lost it. Like full-on rage mode, screaming, the whole thing. After that, Brad got desperate. He tried to empty our remaining joint accounts. Thank you to everyone who told me to secure my finances as soon as possible. I had already moved most of our joint money into an account only I could access. He went to our house while I was at work and tried to take a bunch of stuff, but I had already changed the locks. Again, thank you, Reddit. And then he started telling all our mutual friends that I had cheated on him, which is just, I can't even. I've never cheated on anyone in my life. I never wanted to hurt Brad. I just wanted the truth and to be treated with respect. But at that point, I was done playing nice. The court hearing was intense. I felt so sick walking in with my attorney. Brad came in looking all smug and confident, barely even glanced at his parents who were sitting in the back. The judge started by addressing all the financial stuff, the hidden accounts, the $40 loan that Brad had apparently pocketed, all of it. Brad's lawyer tried to argue that the recording was illegal and shouldn't be admissible. When the judge allowed the recording, Brad whispered something to his lawyer and looked panicked for the first time. Then Frank testified. He was so calm, laying out multiple instances of Brad's dishonesty over the years. Not just with me, but with other people too. Family members, friends, previous girlfriends. It was like hearing about a stranger, not the man I married. When Yvonne testified about the fake medical expenses, Brad suddenly stood up and yelled that his parents were betraying him. The judge warned him to control himself or face contempt charges. Brad knocked his chair over and stormed toward the exit. But before leaving, he turned and shouted that I had planned this all along. The judge immediately ruled in my favor on basically everything. I got the house, my full retirement accounts, and a significant portion of our joint assets. Plus, Brad has to pay me back for the money he had hidden. But that's not even the craziest part. After court documents became public, Brad's firm conducted an internal investigation and discovered he had been misrepresenting client accounts. He got fired and is now under investigation by some financial regulatory agency. I don't really understand all the details, but apparently it's serious. I have such mixed feelings about everything. Like I'm relieved and vindicated that everyone knows the truth now, but I'm also just sad for what could have been. And I keep asking myself if there were signs I should have seen earlier. How did I miss this for 8 years? It's especially weird with his parents. They've maintained contact with me, but have completely cut ties with Brad after discovering everything he's done. I feel guilty about that sometimes, even though I know it's not my fault. Oh, and Heidi, the coworker Brad was flirting with, actually reached out to me. She apologized and said Brad had told her he was separated and going through a divorce for over a year. She had no idea he was still with me. I actually believe her. She seemed genuinely horrified when she found out the truth. I've started therapy to work through all my trust issues from this. I've also reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage. It's been healing to rebuild those relationships. The weirdest question I keep getting asked is whether I'm ready to date again. Honestly, I have no idea. This whole experience has made me super cautious about relationships, but I'm also trying not to let Brad's actions destroy my ability to trust people. I guess I'm hopeful about the future. Thanks again to everyone who supported me through this nightmare. Your advice literally changed the course of my life.